Hi everyone, it's Jen with Spirited Saturdays, and excuse me, it's late. It's late and I feel a bit disheveled here, but whatever. Um, so this week we're talking about eating disorders and schizophrenia, which I just thought was perfectly in line with something that, well, we're talking about schizophrenia in my class. I take a music therapy class, and this week we happen to be talking about schizophrenia, which I was able to talk to my professor about this topic, this week's topic, and he gave me some feedback on some of my thoughts and contributed some thoughts of his own, and I thought that was so valuable, so I'm going to be incorporating his feedback into this video. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about eating disorders and schizophrenia, ways they overlap, how you might distinguish between them, and offering some suggestions on how to cope if you have both of these illnesses. Psychosis is one of the symptoms of schizophrenia, and I'm just going to be using those terms interchangeably, but just keep in mind that psychosis is a symptom of other mental illnesses as well. Basically, it means losing touch with reality, and it has different ways of manifesting itself, which I'll go into greater detail with. Yeah. So something that my professor just spelled out for me real quick is just that eating disorders and schizophrenia, while they're both illnesses, eating disorders manifest themselves as addictions, and schizophrenia manifests itself as psychosis. So that's where they break off. Like eating disorders, illness, schizophrenia, illness, but the first is an addiction and the other is a psychosis. There are several ways this can kind of go. You can have an eating disorder by itself, you can have schizophrenia by itself, or you can have both. If you have both, it's possible that one was dormant for a while and triggered by the other at some point. For example, if you've had dormant schizophrenia that was triggered by malnutrition through your eating disorder, or you can have the genes to develop an eating disorder that was brought about as a way to cope with or respond to schizophrenia. If you have either schizophrenia or an eating disorder, you might experience a symptom that could look as though it belongs to the other diagnosis. So you might respond to a psychotic symptom with another psychotic symptom that could look like an eating disorder symptom, but it's not. For example, a psychotic symptom might be that the voices are telling you to throw up after your meals. But really it's because they're saying that you have a demon inside you that you need to exercise, and it has nothing to do with inability to tolerate fullness or body image, things like that. So psychosis typically involves either hallucinations or delusions, or both. Eating disorders manifest themselves in negative thoughts and false beliefs about your body and yourself. And so in both, there is sort of this overarching theme of emptiness. You can have a sense of emptiness in either illness. You can have a disconnect from the body or a disconnect from the needs of the body. In eating disorders, you can be hyper aware of your body, but not as it pertains to yourself as a whole. I guess that can also apply to psychosis. And just to clarify that, delusions are false beliefs, and hallucinations are false perceptions. I mentioned that. So I'd like to talk a minute about image as it pertains to eating disorders and then possibly schizophrenia. But just to talk a little bit about image and sort of how some of the psychotic behaviors might play into the eating disorder, but again, it's that fine tweaking of what's really going on. So as a result of this emptiness, sometimes to compensate for it, an eating disordered person might wear heavy makeup, tight clothes, to create this, try to create this kind of perfect image from head to toe, create a mask or a fake persona. If they're underweight, they might have pride, like a false sense of pride that they've lost weight, but they might not see how skinny they are, which would mean that they were out of touch with reality, and therefore they don't realize that they stand out negatively. They think they stand out positively. On the flip side, sometimes they dress down, they wear baggy clothes, they want to be under the radar. This, I mean, weight across the weight spectrum, across the different kinds of eating disorders. You know, want to be under the radar. There's a lot of shame there, and so these are all driven, these decisions on what to wear, whether to be kind of showy or kind of hidden. These are typically driven by false beliefs that we have about ourselves, that we don't have any sustenance, or that we're too much, or that we should be ashamed of ourselves for some reason. So yeah, that would be kind of the delusion aspect of that in some way. But again, it's very much pertinent to eating disorders. That's very eating disorder based sort of shame, delusion that's learned, that's integrated, that's conditioned, believed. You can believe it with schizophrenia too, so maybe forget that word. In terms of hallucinations, I think with eating disorders, again, they're largely conditioned. They're largely thought originated. So if someone sees a bigger person in the mirror than is actually there, there was a belief there first, and I think it might be more about how they interpret what they see than what they actually see with their eyes. With psychosis, it seems like there might not be this any kind of pre-existing belief. You might not need to have a pre-existing belief in order to form a psychotic hallucination. It could seem completely random and unpredictable, and there doesn't need to be any interpretation that makes you believe something is there that is not. Also, with eating disorders, seeing what isn't there might also mean seeing a weight loss. You actually do see something that is there, but entering into a competition with yourself to get smaller and saying, yes, I see this, but it isn't enough. So in terms of voices, the main distinction I can think of here is, well, on both sides, the voices can be negative, and they often are negative. They're all there much of the time. They can drive a person to the brink. Sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes with schizophrenia, the voices sound like they're coming from outside of you. They seem audible. You hear them through your ears. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they originate from within your head as thoughts. So either way, whatever it is, the voices are manifested slightly differently, but they're equally real, I think, in both illnesses. And they drive the illness. They just drive it and they feed into it. And it's quite tormenting. I mean, I've heard this from people who have been schizophrenic and who are schizophrenic and who've heard voices, and they hear them all the time. It's very disheartening to, you know, because they don't want them there. You know, it's just like with eating disorders. We don't want them there. We want them to go far away, and we pretty much do anything to get them to do that, which just fuels it so much. Because if you respond to something with a stressful response, I just don't want this, and resistance, and it just brings it on. It could. I want to talk a little bit about a friend of mine. I used to have this friend who was had a form of schizophrenia. And she actually lost a lot of weight in a short period of time and didn't eat much at all. And I thought she had an eating disorder. I really just did. I just was very quick to conclude that. But as I came to understand, her behaviors were pretty much all related to the other disorder. And part of my understanding was just through talking to her over time and even reflecting back later on with her, she didn't have any of the guilt about her body or about her eating. She didn't have any body discontent that are usually hallmarks of eating disorders and things like that. It took me a while to fully accept that this was not just denial on her part, but she actually didn't have those emotional components that most with EDs have. And so, yeah, like she actually, well, she ended up gaining a lot of weight after a while and still didn't have that shame about her. No shame, nothing like that. She was pretty cool with her body, like across the board. And so in eating disorders and psychosis, there can be a socially inconsistent behavior. I think with an eating disorder, socially inconsistent behavior can tie into either having or losing control. And a psychotic socially inconsistent behavior can be a lack of comprehension, a lack of rationale, a lack of awareness of any potential reaction of those around you. So with my friend, I think the socially inconsistent piece of her eating was less about being out of control than it was dissociative and just not understanding, not realizing the potential reactions of those around her. It was like there was a piece that just wasn't connecting, like a little wire that wasn't connecting A to B. Again, fine distinction, really such a fine distinction, because in eating disorders this would be considered denial. If you do this, then this happens, doesn't quite faze people who are in their eating disorders. They can have trouble perceiving consequence, but I think one difference is that they can logically put together the consequence. They can do it logically. Even if they feel powerless to do anything to prevent it, if you ask them what will happen as a result of starving, they can probably tell you, but they continue to do it anyway and emotionally deny that it will happen. If you struggle with an eating disorder and psychosis, here are some things you can try to prevent one from perpetuating the other. So first of all, the basic life-saving stuff: medication, proper nutrition, structure, a safe support system, keeping up with personal hygiene. Schizophrenics sometimes get confused about this. It can help them, and in turn it can help the body image, confidence levels, and any just basic self-care. Also, it goes without saying that the more intense treatment is needed during acute periods of struggle. You would need to try hard to stay connected to others. This is sort of once removed from like actually no, these, what am I, wait, forget it. I just said something. Forget that. You need to try to stay connected with others. Don't isolate. It's okay to be alone sometimes, but not out of fear of connecting. So try to make that distinction. It's important to make sure you connect so you can reality test delusions of schizophrenia and distortions of eating disorders. In addition to covering your basic needs, really talking, expressing, reaching out for support are all so important. And just continuing to recover and continuing to cope and adjust to life. With schizophrenia and eating disorders, I would say that just also because of what I'm doing in school, I'm seeing really how creative arts modalities such as music or dance could really help you reconnect to the body and experience your body from within and not be afraid of it and become friends with it and kind of integrate with it. Drama therapy can help you engage the parts of yourself that are dissociated. Art could help you get out aggression or help you define yourself and identify your needs via shape and color. So that's all I've got for this. I hope, I should have said this at the beginning. I'm certainly not a doctor. I'm not a healthcare provider, professional, anything like that. But, basically just gathered from stuff I'm loosely kind of learning in my classes, stuff I bounced off of my professor, my personal life experience, people I've known, and just interpretations that I decided to try and make on my own. So don't take any of this as the way it is for sure. Check. Please do that with your therapist, your doctor. Most importantly, again, stuff I should have said at the beginning. But I hope this helped. This was a really interesting one for me to think about and talk to you guys about. So any feedback is welcome. All right, take care.